This is a short overview of William Shakespeare, a very important English playwright and poet, and his most popular work, Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1564. He wrote 38 plays and presented most of them at a place called the Globe Theatre, which was especially built for his plays in London, England. It was built in the round in order to maximize viewing. The audience was standing room only, and nobody was seated or comfortable except the Queen when she arrived. His most famous play is a tragedy, as I said before, called Romeo and Juliet. William Shakespeare wrote many things. Among his prolific works are sonnets, tragedies, comedies, histories, and tragicomedies. Examples of a tragedy include King Lear, which is about an older king and his children, and there ends up being a lot of murder and mayhem in this tragedy. One of his most famous comedies is called The Taming of the Shrew, which is about a man who goes and gets his wife and then proceeds to make her mind him, and she ends up minding him, of course, because this is a male-dominated society. Histories include the historical figures that are real, and one is Henry V. The Merchant of Venice is a combination of tragedy and comedy, and it was most recently put into a film and acted by Al Pacino. Back to Romeo and Juliet. The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet is about two young people who fall in love. The themes, obviously, throughout the play include love, hate, anger, culture, mortality, and clashing family values. The play is about these young people who fall in love, but it doesn't work out because their families don't get along. The language of the play Romeo and Juliet is in Old English, which is sometimes hard to read until you get used to it. But once a person gets used to the reading of the play, you start to understand more readily as you go along. You should question things as we read and write down these questions. One of the major questions, in my opinion, is, are these two young people really in love, or are they just young and silly? Shakespeare writes the entire play of Romeo and Juliet in a poetic format. However, there are 3 specific sonnets found in the play. The prologue to Act 1 of Romeo and Juliet is a sonnet. This sonnet sets up the action. It tells us that the ending will be tragic. Shakespeare is known for writing sonnets, and when you go to college, you will be reading many of Shakespeare's sonnets and analyzing them. Sonnets are very specific in their form. They have a 14-line rhyming format in iambic pentameter and a light change of meaning called a turn in the very last 2 lines. Read with me the prologue, which is the first sonnet in Romeo and Juliet. 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end not could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage. The which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. The second sonnet in the play is Romeo and Juliet's first kiss sonnet. This sonnet is spoken by 2 individual voices, Romeo and Juliet. It is a traditional Shakespearean sonnet. It has the same rhyme scheme, rhythm, and structure. The only difference is that 2 characters rather than 1 speak this sonnet in turns. It contains the required twist with the ending couplet. Romeo and Juliet's first kiss is a sonnet. Romeo, if I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle fine is this, my lips two blushing pilgrims ready stand. Oh, smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. Juliet, good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss. Romeo, have not saints lips and holy palmers too? Juliet, I, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer. Romeo, oh, then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. Juliet, saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake. Romeo, then move not, while my prayer's effect I take. The third sonnet within Romeo and Juliet reviews the action of Act 1 and prepares the audience for Act 2. The third sonnet is a very good example of a sonnet structure. It has 3 distinct stanzas. Each is nearly complete and has a meaning all its own. It builds upon one another in order to increase the tension and conflict, and the final couplet contains a twist that is more dramatic, and it changes the meaning. The words and meaning of this sonnet perfectly illustrate the prescribed structure, and Shakespeare was a master of the sonnet. You must remember that. Now old desire doth in his deathbed lie, and young affection gapes to be his heir. That fair for which we love groaned for and would die, with tender Juliet matched, is now not fair. Now Romeo is beloved and loves again, alike bewitched by the charm of looks, but to his foe supposed he must complain, and she steal love's sweet bait from fearful hooks. Being held a foe, he may not have access to breathe such vows as lovers use to swear, and she, as much in love, her means much less, to meet her new beloved anywhere. But passion lends them power, time means to meet, tempering extremities with extreme sweet. And now we shall read Romeo and Juliet.